Estás escuchando Conversaciones de Altura.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Conversaciones de Altura, episode 94. Thank you so much for tuning in. Means a lot. Tonight we have a great episode. We talk to none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Jeff Pinkus from the mighty Butthole Surfers. He also played with powerful Melvins. He collaborates with them quite often, so it was a pleasure and an honor to be able to talk to him. He's very down to earth, and he shared a lot of what he's going through or what he's been doing through this whole COVID-19 shit. So it was really interesting to see him where he's at now. This is for sure one of my favorite episodes. So let's jump right into it. And before we go into the show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know that most of our episodes are in Spanish, but from time to time, or actually now we're dropping more episodes in English. So we really appreciate it if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook, Instagram as Conversaciones de Altura. We thought about changing the name maybe in English for our episodes in English, but nah, fuck it, in Spanish. So thank you for listening or watching. We really appreciate it. And for those who are watching on YouTube, I don't know why, but my camera made me look like a Simpsons character. So if you have a funny name for how I be called in the Simpsons universe, please drop a comment below. And that's it, and that's that. Thanks again. We love you guys. Now I'll leave you with Jeff Pinkus.
Hola amigos, bienvenidos al programa. Hola Jeff, how are you, brother? Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure.
Hola, gracias mi hermano. Thanks for having me on. It's so good to talk with you after our little conversations. I know we got a lot in common. So yeah, other than wearing shorts and hugging dudes.
Yes, it's really cool because we do have a lot of things in common that we will talk about a bit later. But I want to start because I was doing research in order to talk to you, and I find your story or the stuff that I found about your story find it really fascinating. So I want to start from the beginning. Your first instrument was the banjo before bass?
No, my first instrument was acoustic guitar when I was a little kid, and my sister was playing music, and so my folks were like, "You want to play? You want to try playing as well?" So they gave me my sister's acoustic guitar to take some lessons with, and I didn't realize how badass of a song "Puff the Magic Dragon" was, but it wasn't what I wanted to learn at the time, and I was probably like 9 years old maybe. And so I told my mom I did not want to take lessons from this person anymore. And then I played an electric guitar, which I got, it's like a hand-me-down. And it was how is that brand? I was an Epiphone. It was an Epiphone Les Paul. And I was playing that for a little bit. And then I kind of like, I was young. I didn't really keep up with it as much. And I went to a place called Rhythm City in Atlanta. And we traded in some stuff, and I went by the bass guitars, and I started playing on the bass. It was a Fender Mustang, I remember, and I had the amp was from it had a rope handle on it, and the guy was like, "This was used by Paul Revere and the Raiders," and I didn't really know who they even were back then. I don't even know if it was a bass amp, but they sold it to us. My folks didn't know the difference, anyways. Right. So I brought that home, and then when I was doing electric guitar, I remember like I was fascinated with bass guitar, but I didn't know that's what I was fascinated with. And there was a song called Brick House. I remember I wanted the guitar player from Mother's Finest was my teacher at that point. Oh, wow. And I took a few classes with him. They're one of my favorite all-time bands. I just happened to live kind of close to him. And that was his side job, was teaching turds like me how to play guitar. But I asked him how to play like Brick House. And I didn't really want to know how the guitar went. I wanted to play the bass. And so he gave me like all these weird chords, like, yeah, No, I was like, no. That's why I knew I wanted to play bass. So that's when I switched over to that. And then I had some jackass of a teacher that told me that I could never play professionally. I was only probably like 11, couldn't play professionally with jazz Mustang bass. And because it only had one pickup and it was short scale. Well, I play a fucking one pickup short scale now, motherfucker. So yeah. So I ended up unfortunately getting rid of that bass. And but the bass kind of stuck with me a little bit, and started playing around with the banjo when I was young too, but I didn't really start really figuring out anything with it. It was more just something of a fascination. And then I started getting into it more in the late 80s and then early 90s, where I played a song on the Butthole Surfers independent worm saloon, played a song called Naked Man. And it was one that I wrote when we were out at the studio in Marin County with John Paul Jones. And never in my 15-year-old High Times magazine reading, pot smoking, acid taking days did I think that I would write a song on banjo that would be played live with me, with the bass player from Led Zeppelin and Paul from the Butthole Surfers and King on the congas next to me. And so we just, that was fun to do that. And I played a little bit with the Flaming Lips while we were on the road, and then we recorded a little single that came out, and kind of like just kept it to myself after that. And then this fella Danny Barnes, he's kind of my sensei, like you're doing jiu-jitsu, my banjo sensei, because I'm a banjo wrestler. It was Danny Barnes, still is, and he's like who I go to for any questions I have whatsoever. But he liked some of my songs I was doing, and he asked me if I'd do a cassette for him on Minner Bucket Records. It's MINNER Bucket Records, but it was actually cassette only. Oh, okay. He did the artwork himself. He mixed it. We recorded it live in Austin in the studio, and he just wanted kind of to hand it out, not hand it out. He wanted to sell it, but he wanted it to be like a mixtape that you would make for your friends. And that was the idea of it, limited edition run. And I was like, well, hey, I got a little label too. Do you mind if I put it out on, on CD and vinyl as well? And he's like, no, that'd be great. And so I did that. And that's how I did my first banjo record, Keep on the Grass. And then after that, obviously, the pandemic hit after, and most everybody wanted to be in a solo band after the pandemic hit. Yeah, I was ahead of the curve. I already had one album out, but you're not truly solo unless you do 2 albums. So I did the second album during the pandemic. Well, I don't know. I'm just saying that now because that's what I did. But no, it's the pandemic hit and it changed everything. It was actually I got to record my album by myself here in my house. This cheap piece of wood, got a fake wood right there. But that was it's a really cheap house on the top of a really fucking crime-riddled hill, but it's got a new deck that overlooks that.
Amazing, man! It looks beautiful.
It is beautiful, and the weather now just got beautiful. This is our second year out here, so But so I had a little studio set up inside, and while we couldn't really talk to anybody or have anybody over or hang out or jam with anybody, and I there's something about the internet shows I don't really dig. I like playing in front of people, not in front of like a camera. I did one for my buddy's Whiskey Dick on their anniversary, and they asked me to play, and I got my projectors set up and my screen set up in the living room, set up my monitors, and had it blasting, and just recorded it through with my phone through there. And it actually sounded really nice, and it looked like I was at some kind of studio or something. But that was just our fucking crooked living room in there, and with my wife bringing me some whiskey and my dogs running through, So it was a nice experience on that one. But other than that, I kind of went into doing pre-produced videos. I hooked up with my friends, the Weary Boys, and they're an Austin kind of legend band, and they were doing it was a video show, I guess. It wasn't a podcast thing. Okay. We'd have all of us on it, and we'd we'd all make videos, and it was kind of like a competition. We'd have a topic of what we were doing, and then we would like see who was the best video for that week. And the first week I won, but I was so drunk when we did the broadcast, I signed out, and because I was like passed out, and I woke up thinking I totally missed the whole thing. But I actually won the first week.
Oh,
and the next week's one of the guys cheated. He kept putting his little cute little daughter in his fucking videos, and I was like, that's fucking cheating, man. I'm gonna have to borrow someone's kid. There's no way I can compete with this. But that was so I ended up doing like 3 videos, for that, and that was fun. That was entertaining, and to me, that was more entertaining to people watching than just sitting there and sitting in the kitchen in my shorts and playing a song or something. I think it kind of like I spent the time to try and entertain some people, and wasn't doing it for money, never asked for anything back, just like, here you go. And that was fun for me. I don't like the begging on the internet. And like if you had to walk to work every day the same way, and you see a guy that's sitting there on the side of the road, and you like feel bad the first day, and you're like, here you go, here's a couple bucks, and the next day you're like, here's $1, and then he's there again, you're like, here's another $1. Then you're like, why do I keep walking this way? I'm gonna walk a different way. And I think when everybody started begging for money on Facebook and Instagram, that people just quit, like, tune those people out. It's like you feel bad if you can't give them money every time you pass by them. But it's a weird thing. You want to help everybody, but you just can't. Sometimes you got to take care of yourself too. No, as they say on an airplane, put the mask on yourself first so you can help others. What good is it if I'm broke all of a sudden now too, because I gave everybody $1? No, man. Somebody's got to help me.
Right. No, I agree with you. What you just said, because I live in Mexico City, so that happens to me really often, where I walk down the street and there's someone asking for money. So I give that person, and then I go to the subway, and then there's someone asking for money. But I can't help all people,
Right.
I can understand like why bands are playing live on the internet shows, but it doesn't appeal to me to watch those shows. And like you said, I can't help all bands, I wish I had the money. If I was a millionaire, I would probably, I don't know,
you wouldn't be talking to me right now. You'd be on your yacht somewhere.
I would, you know what? I would probably have you on my yacht shooting the shed, man.
Right on.
I think money is an energy, and I think you can do great stuff with money for sure, man. So I'd rather have my friends hanging out with me than be all pretentious.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I look at money in a totally different way. I just need enough to get by. I'm not, when I die, of course my kid's like, well, give some to me, man. But, it's like, I don't look at money that way. I've never been good at doing that. To me, I feel rich now because I'm not going into a day job today. So I get to sit up here and enjoy this beautiful weather and talk to a friend now instead of doing that. So I feel blessed, man. I worked hard to get where I'm at, which isn't much, and most people would not consider what I do to be successful, but I consider it successful.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. I'm 40, almost 42 years old, and I'm only learning that success depends on how you see yourself and what are the things that you have accomplished and that you wanna keep doing. I think for me, it's unless you don't stop and you keep doing stuff, creating stuff, that's success. Everybody has a success. Yeah. And
to have the chance to do it, to not have to beat yourself up like I'd have to do during the pandemic. I took some work outside, and I ended up, with my arm numb and stuff, cutting holes into a basement concrete and doing all kinds of stuff that I would normally be doing if I was able to play. I've done that stuff before. I worked at a polo ranch for a couple of years, and I've done all kinds of work, to where I wasn't afraid to get dirty as well as enjoy my time being a musician. But I think keeping your overhead low and not caring about my newest car, or me and my wife's newest car. I think she beats me out with her 93 Toyota, but I have a 91 F-150 Ford truck, and then I have a 78 BMW motorcycle and a 72 Dodge Balmarea package RV that needs a little bit of work. But yeah, it's like the little things in life keep us happy, you know. I don't need a payment over my head, because then all of a sudden I get stressed out, and then I gotta do things I don't want to do. And I've worked for years sleeping on people's floors and doing things that nobody else would fucking want to do if they think, you know, the music life is glamorous. Well, it was a little different when I was growing up, but you know, to me, it's like, this is the great payoff right now, is I get to live with low overhead and make music that I want to make, and be able to play in front of people and be able to do a few things that I would like to do, which I prefer travel over things. And, you know, that's where we talked about Peru, and, you know, those are the things that make me happy. Those are the things that complete my life, you know.
No, for sure, man. I agree with you. I mean, I haven't done the touring that you've done. I've been lucky enough to tour with. I did merch for a Helmet for a few years, and just noticing that, or just having touched that in a small way, made me think like, okay, traveling. I prefer traveling rather than collecting stuff that I'm gonna barely use, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I just, when we moved to this smaller house out here, which I'm very glad we did, we had a place in Austin that had a garage for me to keep just a bunch of shit in. And yeah, I'd store my shit in there. And then I'd go look for something, and I'd pull out a box. I'd be like, oh wow, that's cool. I haven't seen that in 3 years. And then I put the box back in, shove it back in. I wouldn't see, you know, what's the point of having shit like that? Even no matter how cool it seems for those 5 minutes. And so it was nice just to get rid of everything I could and move into a way smaller place. And that helped me fund being able to make it through the pandemic, and to make a move out here, and then to have less things. Like, here, hold on one sec, let me grab something.
Yeah, for sure, man.
All right, no, this is, see, to be able
Oh shit.
See, that's what I want to do. I want to sit around and be able to have that in my backyard, you know, just for fun. Yeah.
You know, we can talk a little bit later about that. But I was reading that when you were like 17, you did a tour by yourself.
No, where did you read that? That's when I joined the Butthole. So I was touring back then. Not touring. I was playing shows, regional shows around Georgia, where I'm from. But really, I was too young to be doing that. I left home at 15, and I traveled around, went to DC and Wilmington and places like that. But I did not tour when I was 17 by myself. I didn't start touring by myself until just recently. I joined the Butts at the end of when I was 17, just turning 18, and I wasn't living at home then. So I was by touring, if that you mean not having a home. Yeah, I did that.
Okay, so because I read, maybe I misread, or you know, Wikipedia, you know, and like I said before, there's not a lot of information about, or interviews where I can grab some information to ask you about you, which I find it fascinating, to be honest, because that makes me imagine things, and I can ask questions. But I maybe I misread that you tour like 58 shows.
Oh, that was in probably, maybe you're thinking 2000. No, it was 2019 or 2019, I think, is when I did 58 shows by myself.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So I did, and that was fucking amazing, man. It was like, you know, I don't know if we talked about Peru and stuff like that, but there's a book that I read that's like, it doesn't really matter what anybody thinks about you, and you know that, as you know, because you know how your show went, you know how if you were a dick or not, you know all those things about yourself. It doesn't matter what someone says. You just say thank you, appreciate that. But when you're traveling by yourself for around the country in Canada, for me, 58 shows, I'm loading in, I'm selling merch, I'm setting up my screens and doing all my work all by myself. load out, drive somewhere, sleep in the truck, go somewhere the next town, do that. But you know, I've got nothing but my brain kicking with myself, and those are the times where you can analyze what you really think happened there, not somebody that, you know, wants to say hi and like, great show. It's like, no, actually I fucked up on the third and the sixth song, and I don't feel good about the sounds. There was that buzz going through. Yeah, that's the stuff that's going through my head. It's like, how can I make that better, man? Yeah, like you know, like sports dudes say, it's like, it's okay to make a mistake, you just don't want to make it twice. You know, right. It's so you got to analyze what you did and do that. And so that was a really fun time for me, just to get in my own head, because it was, you know, the U.S. is big, and especially West Coast shows. You know, you're driving a long ways to get to shows, and the East Coast is only like, you know, 2-3 hours depending on traffic. You know, usually to get from town to town, but you get to the West Coast, and you got a good 8-10 hours sometimes, some days, to go from town to town, and that's a lot of being with yourself. You know, if you're not comfortable with yourself, you're not going to like that.
That's a really important point, because I mean, I live in a, like I said before, I live in a huge city, so I see a lot of people walking around with their, and I've been guilty of this, walking around with their earbuds, you know.
Yeah.
And I was that person until I realized what you just said, that it's important to be with your thoughts, even if you don't like what you are thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to accept it. Sometimes I do need a distraction. Don't get me wrong. Right. Sometimes it's too much, and I do need to, like tonight I'm going to watch the first NFL game of the season, you know, and totally like numb my brain out for a minute, and like go, okay, I'm going to watch some of these guys that are supposed to be the best of the best go at each other for a minute, and I'm not going to think about it. Or, you know, like I'm from Georgia. There's a high percentage of people from Georgia that like playing tennis. I'm one of them. And so I hadn't played for like years and years. And I started playing in Austin with a bunch of old dudes from my punk rock club, emos. And you know, it was like these old fucking punk rockers playing tennis. And I moved out here and did that. But that's like, all of a sudden you're playing chess against somebody live. You don't have time to think about your problems or anybody else's problems. It's just like, how can I beat this guy? Okay, right now that side's not working good for him. I'm going to hit it over there, and he's not good at running in. I'm going to fucking drop shot. Like, you're never thinking about the problems of your world. So sometimes a distraction, you know, like probably for you, jiu-jitsu is that distraction where you can't think about anything else. You have to focus on that, because, you know, being self-employed, you know, my brain's like, you know, it's constantly going, and now doing solo and stuff. And even when I had a band, I always had to make all the decision. I had to, you know, post Butthole Surfers stuff about my solo bands, and, you know, bands like Honky and Daddy Longhead. I had to make my own decisions. So that's a lot, and your brain's always going. So sometimes I think you just need a break, and weed is a good break. For me, mushrooms get me a little bit outside of that box, and you know, it's nice sometimes. You know, it's a lot going on in there, and also we have a lot of time where, you know, things are being broadcast at us whether we want to or not. Like anybody that's going to listen or watch this podcast, they're hearing me and you talking, and, you know, you spend all day with everybody else broadcasting stuff at you, and if you don't have that time to sit by yourself and broadcast out of your own self to the rest of the world, then you're not doing it right. You know, you need that time for yourself to break away from, turn everybody else's input out, and then actually put your own self out into the ether, you know?
For sure. Was that one of the reasons, or the main reason, you decided to do this solo tour, just like to get out and experience this? Or was it more part of, okay, I have to do this by myself? What was like the main reason?
Yeah, that's a good question. To me, I was looking forward to it because I had to prove to myself that I could get this thing together and do all this by myself. And I didn't just do my music. I was doing the videos and merch, just like I said, and driving and doing all that stuff as well. And so that was a test to me. I'm used to, I would drive to a show, and then somebody else would drive us after the show to the hotel or whatever. And so I would get hammered, you know, like, you know, by the end of the night. And then, you know, I can't do that when I'm doing the solo stuff. Yeah, I have to keep a good head on myself, you know, and that was a good thing. I think partially like when you're touring and you're on a lower level touring, that, you know, part of getting paid is actually like your hospitality. And so if you don't drink, you know, that's like, they're still taking that money out of your thing, but it helps numb the fact that you're in a you know, puke, you know, smelling club, and you know, with ice cubes in a urinal, and you don't know where you're going to sleep yet that night. And, you know, all of a sudden someone gives you a bottle of booze, and it's like, hey man, yeah, I'll take that. Yeah. So it's easy to get wrapped into that world. When I was down in you know, Peru, I actually had an experience with wondering about some of my music that I did and how that would affect other people if I was influencing them in a bad way, should I say, with my songs. And I kind of put that into who I was talking to, who I have no idea at the time. And my fingers started moving after I asked that. And I was like, whoa. And then I hear, you think you wrote those songs? And so I was like, okay, I was, you know, that's my ego thinking I write these songs. I have no idea where these songs come from. But in a sense, when I was doing that, I felt like I wanted to do something that was more just me and what I wanted to project out into the world. And that's when I really got into the idea of doing my solo stuff. And there's another thing too, when you're in a band, it's really hard. Like when I play with the Melvins, they're professionals and they're musicians. When I play with Butthole Surfers, professionals and musicians. When I play with a lot of my other bands, they have another job, kids, whatever. There's a lot of things. And when things don't get done that you think should get done, it's easy to be upset with someone else for it, because you want everybody to have that same drive that you have. Right. That's impossible. And it's really hard to hold that against somebody else. And I realized I was doing that. And if I can't find the people that have the same drive as me, that are willing to sacrifice and take that leap to go out there and do that, I would rather do it by myself. Right. And so that was one of the goals of me doing my solo stuff, is not having to rely on anybody else, and to try and make it to where it's not missing anything for someone that goes out there. Yeah, it's not the same as seeing a honky show where, you know, we got, you know, driving drums and you know, guitars going whittly 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 and stuff like that. But you know, I've got lows and I've got highs, and I've got my voice, and I've got a couple of effects here and there to try and fill in the gaps. I think make sound like a complete song to me.
Right, man.
Yeah. So without having to stress out anybody, and I could be really good friends with my friends and not be upset with them because they can't make practice for, you know, 4 weeks in a row, and they can't do whatever. You know, it's like that. I can't be mad at people for that. And that was a big lesson to me. I put a lot on other people, and you can't put a lot on other people like that.
So yeah, it seems super interesting. So besides that, besides realizing that you don't want to put that pressure into people that you play with, what other lessons did you learn during this solo trip? Because man, it's not, I mean, I dare to say that most people don't know how to be by themselves, man.
I agree. It takes a lot of people. I mean, to me, it's like you get into this routine, and you kind of end up with, like, you know, even when you're with a band, you're gonna make a new best friend every night, and then you won't see him for another like 8 months or whatever. But you know, it's like there's a certain pattern you get into, and you know, like I said, if you're not used to being by yourself, or you don't like being by yourself, or you got a kid at home and you're barely getting by when you're on the road, and you're like, your kid's not eating right, you know, it could be extremely difficult. You know, my kid's 26 years old. We do mushrooms together. You know, we're at that age now to where, you know, we can smoke a joint or do mushrooms and talk about everything and anything. Most of my friends are like, yeah, I quit drinking. I'm like, oh, you had a kid? And they're like, yeah. You know, it's like, you know, of course you quit drinking. You know, nobody wants to be the drunk dad sitting at home with a baby, you know. So it's not necessarily they wanted to quit drinking or they wanted to quit doing mushrooms or whatever. They just felt their proper obligation and responsibilities that they need to have. So it's you know, we're all at different points of our life. Right. Someone posted something about their midlife crisis, and I was like, I'm not looking forward to mine. I have no idea when the fuck that's going to be, but I'm not looking forward to it.
Right. I mean, and you know what? You don't have to go through a midlife crisis. I do believe that. Like I've seen that with my father, and he went through like some sort of midlife crisis a few years ago. I'm like, okay, now I get it. I don't have to do that, and I don't know if you agree, but in order to not to go through a midlife crisis, you have to do what you have to do in the age you are at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you want to experiment, so you don't have to experiment later on in life, or at least you don't regret not experimenting.
Right. I mean, this is where it got to me, where my age became a factor, and I didn't, it wasn't something I thought about beforehand or anything, but all of a sudden I realized that my liberties could be taken away because of my age. And I went down and got married. Me and my wife did our vows in Argentina on Perito Marino, the glacier down there in Patagonia. We spent our time there right before. Well, we've been together 13 years, but we just got married then. Oh shoot, man, I lost my train of thought there.
Argentina midlife crisis.
Oh, you see, yeah, that's my midlife crisis right there. Oh, okay. So I was talking about the age. So yeah, we wanted to do our vows on Perito Marino, and I was like, well, they have a full day tour or they have the short tour, and I was asking her which one that she wanted to do, and then they said, oh, well, on the I started reading, I was like, oh, baby, well, it looks like we only have one choice because I'm over 50, and so they won't let me do the long tour. And so already, like, all I could do was the short tour. That's when I realized that my age, even if I'm physically able to and mentally able to do something, that insurance reasons are going to prevent me from doing these things that I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I would say definitely experience as much as you can. I've jumped out of planes 13 times. I've done, gone down to do the ayahuasca. I've traveled around doing. I've done peyote with the Navajo. Grateful for my friends to bring me into that, and just to have these experiences where every day. I read a book on time once. It was a beautiful book. It described the way, like, if you drive to work the same way every day, your brain just shuts off. You don't think about what streets you're turning on or any of that, and you look back a year later, and your memory is like nothing. There's nothing there because you just drove to work the same way, got up at the same time, drove to work. Your brain knows what you're going to do. It knows what you're going to see. If you change your clock a little bit and wake up 5 minutes, 6 minutes earlier and take a left turn where you wouldn't normally take a left turn and get your way to work, your brain all of a sudden kicks in. And that way your memory starts to kick in. And so to me, to do things by yourself and to do things differently and change things up and mix things up, you're going to feel like you had a more fulfilled life than if you have unfortunate routine of 9 to 5 to where you're doing the same thing. And it also happens with the holiday syndrome, where vacation syndrome, where you go to the beach and you sit there for 2 weeks and you're having the most relaxed time of your life, but you're just sitting there with a cocktail, sitting under an umbrella, watching the waves come in. Again, your brain's going to shut off. You're going to go back home and be like, there's no memories of my vacation. It seemed like it was really nice when you went there, but like when I went down to Peru the second time in the Sacred Valley, I met my friends down there, but I was there for 16 days, and I went Lake Titicaca and was with the tribes up on the Reed Islands up there, and went fishing twice up there with them, and traveled around, saw some of the ruins, and did everything I could, and then met up with them and did that. But there wasn't a day where I just sat on my ass and did anything. And I went back, and it seemed like I was gone for months because the memories and all the traveling was there. I didn't sit in one spot and just do that thing. That's what that book talks about with that. Wow. And it also wound me up into a book called Moonwalking with Einstein, which is a book on memory. And without memory, obviously, you don't have time. So, when folks get Alzheimer's, that's pretty much, to me, that's when life is over, because you're not looking back at all these beautiful memories that you created for yourself. And so other than being grateful for the people around you and the people that are helping you out, all those things that we did won't matter at all to us because we won't remember them. So I'm enjoying it while I can.
No, for sure, man. I didn't know about time. I know that when you reach certain state of consciousness, that I think people now refer to it as flow, when you are like super focused on something, that also happens. Like you miss time, like you forget about time. Like, yeah, time stops somehow, right? And it's the same with psychedelics. Like you think you are deep in the rabbit hole for like an hour and it's only like 5 minutes, or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
That's
one of my scariest trips I had when I was a kid was when I was on some very powerful LSD. I wasn't living at home, and I was underage, living in this apartments on Roswell Road, and I remember I was sitting in my room and this big beam of light came up to me and it was time, and I remember I tried to stop it, pushed it with all my all I could, all my might, and it just went and took off right behind me. And I was like, wow, it was into my head. It was like, it made me think about time. And that's why I've been obsessed with it for a long time, probably. It's and I know a guy that works on the atomic clock. So you talk about somebody that's obsessed with time. That'd be, he goes around the world to adjust people's atomic clocks.
Wow.
And then Andrew from the Warlock Pinchers. Now that would be a good podcast for you. You should talk with him, man.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I'll if you can make it happen, that'd be awesome, man. I will
definitely make that happen. He would love that.
Thanks, brother. So let me ask you this, because you've talked about like growing up and experimenting in early age.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Was that part of, I guess my question is, did you approach like me or this type of thought or thinking early on because of like the music scene in Atlanta, or how did that happen? Like when did that
No, that was more of my friends. In fact, I just got a visit from my friend Chip Smith, who we had this place where 7 of us lived in a 2-room apartment across from the high school that we all went to, but they found out I wasn't living at home and I had to go to a junior college. But we were very much psychonauts, all of us, and we were into experiment. There was that time where there was blue gel acid was very, very prominent in the Southeast. You can't drink my hard root beer, dude. And there was and so I remember we saw Black Flag. It was Kira's birthday. And they came through and played, and we were all tripping balls on blue gel acid. And then Flipper finally made it through, and we were sitting there. We were all enjoying Flipper. We hadn't seen them at all ever, and they came through, and their flyer was a broken down van, and so we all took blue gel acid because that's what we did. And we were there, and none of us were moving at all. And they must have thought we all hated it. And they were like, "Don't burn the place down, kiddies," and stuff like that. But we all loved it. But we upset them because we were tripping too hard. So, but I think that was just more of my scene that I was with than it was the Atlanta scene. Because there was like a guy named Angelo. It was a black dude that wore a cape, and he had liquid paper in a paper bag, and he'd always have white around his mouth there, and he had a little cassette player with a mono speaker in there, and he'd walk around. And, so I mean, everybody has their own drugs, whatever they're doing there,
Wow.
But I just happened to be more into the psychonaut thing, man. Me and my friends really like taking off, and we did like 15 days of taking acid. But it was the first day we took 1 hit, second day we took 2, all the way up to 15 hits. And
Shit.
Yeah. So I guess it might have affected me in some ways.
Oh, for sure. In a good way, man. It made you more creative, I bet.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if you do acid once, you go up and then you come down. You don't quite go all the way down. And I think the next time you do it, you go up and then you come down and then you're only here. And then you keep going there, and then also, but before you know it, you're only coming down to here.
You have to step it up.
Yeah.
I've never done. It's funny enough because I've done ayahuasca multiple times, but I've never done LSD. Never.
That's have you ever listened to Terrence McKenna at all? Yeah, Terrence McKenna. I remember someone asked him about what the difference between mushrooms and LSD was, and he goes, "Well, LSD is really analytical," and he was right. And mushrooms is kind of like having a friend, and he was right. And then he started laughing, and he goes, "Now DMT," and he goes, "No, it's a little different." He was talking about smoking, and he goes, "It only lasts for 3 minutes, but that doesn't count because the first minute and a half you think you're dead."
Wow, I don't think.
But LSD is very analytical. It's not like DMT is very visual. Mushrooms is like, to me, it is like having a friend. It's like you're with yourself to think about things in a different way and enjoy things that are around you. And to me, LSD is very visual, but also very analytical. It's not enjoying things as much as picking them apart or figuring stuff out, you know. And that seems consistent to the way it works with me. I'm sure everybody's got their own things, but mushrooms is a much more giggly thing to people, you know. I think in some ways, but I didn't really do mushrooms because I didn't like the way that it made me feel purging wise when I was growing up as much, and acid never made me purge. So I think that was kind of why I did that. And I really got more into the mushrooms after the ayahuasca experience because we were told that would bring back the mother ayahuasca back into our lives for a visit and to get back into that mindset if you wanted to. You know, you got to be honest with yourself. Am I doing this because I want to hang out with a couple of people that are drinking and doing mushrooms, or am I doing mushrooms because I have an intention of what I'm trying to think about or what I'm trying to learn? Same thing with weed. You know, it's why am I smoking this because I want to eat Cheetos and watch something on fucking TV, or do I want to sit and meditate for a while? You know, it's all how you take that. You know, the same things that help us get to where we want to go can be used for different purposes, and you just got to be honest with yourself, I think, before you get into it.
No, for sure, man. I agree, man. And now that we are in this subject, how did the trip to Peru happen? Did you try the medicine beforehand, or was that like your first time?
I went in totally blind. My buddy had been down there before to the Temple of the Way of Light in Iquitos.
Oh,
and
cool.
And it was life-changing for him, and he knew me being the person I was, as my buddy Harley out in Arizona, and he was like, yeah, man, you got to come down here, you need this will change your life, this will be great. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll come down. And he's like, you should check out these videos of these Icaros, this music that they sing, it's beautiful. I was like, no, I just want to experience it for myself when I get there. And so I went through everything, the medical stuff, everything. Went and talked to the director, and we had 5 maestros out there, two male and 3 female, and it was perfect. So told them what, you know, and at that point I just had surgery. I'd had some issues with losing blood when I was actually out touring. And so I'd had an operation on inside myself, and I told them about stuff, and they thought I was probably going to be in poor health for the experience because it's kind of close to it. But I only purged out of 7 journeys. I only purged 1 time, and it was very much had to do with the ceremony itself going on, and he was working on me, and then I remember I was thinking to myself, I was like, I feel like I need to purge something. And then it felt like someone reached inside me with their hands. And I said, should I grab the bowl? And something said, yes. And so I grabbed the bowl. And it was like someone reached down inside me and took out 3 handfuls. Like that. It was very easy on me, whatever. Boom, boom, boom. 3 things out, done. Still never got up off of my mat for all 7 journeys. Never, I purged a lot through yawning and doing a lot of those things. I had some of the most intense experiences that I ever had. When I went to the Sacred Valley, I purged heavy every time. Different person making it, different altitude, different, because I think the first place I went to, sometimes you just go to the best place first, and you don't really need to explore any further and find somewhere. Right. And you go somewhere else and you're like, oh, the other place had this shit down. And that's kind of what I felt like when I went to the second place to do the last 3 I did. But we did go to a monastery and worked with some disabled children and cleaned up some spots in the Andes and went to Machu Picchu as part of the program out there. So as much as I didn't like their involvement, what I didn't like was their involvement with Western medicine in it. They had a doctor who had never done ayahuasca, a nurse that had never done ayahuasca, all floating around in the room, or the doctor wasn't there, the nurse was there. And
Right.
so I remember her coming by while I was in a serious trance, and she kept telling me to drink my water. I was like, I'm 51 years old. I know how to drink my fucking water. And I was like, I got so upset. I was like, she knocked me out of this beautiful place I was at again. I was like, but they never did that at the temple. There was no Western medicine there at all, actually. And wow. So it was a much purer scene, and they were very well at telling everybody what your how you should behave while you're there and how not to affect somebody else's experience. And they didn't go through all that at the second place I went to. Like, I'm not a Beatles fan. This girl that's sitting there starts singing Beatles songs at the top of her lungs while she's like next to me, and I was like, this is not working for me whatsoever. But she wasn't told that's not cool to fucking just start screaming shit out or talking to her husband while it's going on. They didn't teach the proper things that the temple did to me, anyways. I
agree. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. No, but I agree, man. So you have a little bit of context. I worked at Neo Rao, where you see the Maloca.
Mm-hmm.
That's in Iquitos as well. I was there for 3 months helping. I forgot the word in English. Like, I guess helper. Like, I was helping in ceremonies. But
they did that for 3 month ceremonies and 3 month stays at the temple as well in Iquitos. But anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. That's fine. I was working with like the place, and it's fascinating, man, because I learned how to take care of people, and I did notice that. Like, I know for a fact that Temple of the Way of Light, those guys are super pro.
Yes.
Yeah,
and the ayahuasca retreat, my friend went there because he was a little too sick to go to the temple. They didn't feel like they were prepared for as sick as he was, and he needed. So he went to the ayahuasca retreat, which is kind of a sister place of the temple, and they treated him amazingly well, and really, I think have extended his life, by far, and he does too, by the treatment. And right now, because of the pandemic and his health, it's really tough for him to get back down there. He's like, if I die in the jungle, I'll be happy to die down there. That's where I feel at home, So I was happy that he got to experience it before all this stuff happened. And I was actually, it's funny, we're talking about this now, but my child is 26, but he's been saving up money to go to the temple, and I was, he just told me that right before we started talking. We were chatting about something else, just texting each other. But that's something I offered him the 3 month course a while back, and he didn't take it. But I kind of wanted him to work on it. I said, hey, if you can earn the $800 for the airfare, I'll pay for the 3 months of you being there. And he couldn't get the $800 up, so it never quite happened. So he wants to now, but we all find it when the time is right and when it calls you.
For sure, man. I saved. Once I found out about ayahuasca and the healing properties and everything, I'm like, I have to do this in Peru, and it took me like 3 years to make it happen, but I'm glad that I did. And then I was offered the job position, and it's interesting, man. You see people from all types of backgrounds, man. People from Europe traveling all the way to Peru, Americans, Canadians.
We had someone from Iceland, at ours, and she told me, I remember we were talking, and she would actually listen to Graham Hancock, and that's what brought her down there. And she said she'd never smoked a joint, wouldn't know what one looked like. She said she'd only had a couple of glasses of wine in her whole life, and that she had smoked a cigarette once, and that was it. And she was down there, and she decided not to do the ayahuasca ayahuasca the first night to see how everybody reacted to it and everything. She was a little scared by it, but I was like, you are going to be my favorite person to see what happens here, because I can't imagine coming from, like, you know, all the times when they explain things to you, you start thinking like, well, maybe I haven't done anything like this before. Like, you might feel cold, you might feel hot, you might want your blanket, you might, you know, they're trying to give you, you know, like they're explaining it to people that have never, like her, that have never done mushrooms or had never done peyote or never done LSD or anything to get them out of their comfort zone, you know, because you're so not in control at that point, you know. And to me, the ayahuasca, it's different than smoking DMT, because, you know, it really takes your participation to make it happen. You know, you can pull yourself out to a certain extent. There were a couple of times I couldn't by far, but in general, through that 4 to 6 hours, there's time where you can really concentrate on going somewhere, or if for some reason you don't want to, you can get yourself back out. There is more control than if you smoke it, or, you know, that's like going straight to the Godhead. If you smoke it, you know, it's just like a peak. It's like, hey, and you're gone.
Exactly. And I agree with you, man. And when you smoke, I haven't broke through smoking DMT.
Mm-hmm.
I've almost broke through, but never did it. But going back to what you said, there's like your mind keeps telling you, okay, this is gonna be over in 5 minutes, so you know you're safe. But when you drink ayahuasca, that's it. I mean, there's no, how can I say this? There's no exit. You have to wait. That's it. Once you drink it, that's it. There's no going back.
Yeah, and I love that. And the other thing is that, you know, you can't, your brain, your body kills it outside the brain, and your brain emits it when you're born and when you die. And that would explain a lot why, you know, like I had a death one. You might have had a death one where I actually thought I died during it, and it was a very obviously intense journey. But when I got into that position to where I thought I was actually dead, I heard songs of happiness, songs of sadness. It was very confusing. There were 4 different songs going on, and I didn't know if people were happy because I was not dying, or people were happy, or not people, beings were happy because I was going to be joining them. It was kind of like it was a comfortable confusion, and it made me feel better about death in a way. I wrote a song, Woke Up Dead, and kind of the feeling on my banjo version is kind of that feeling of acceptance and not being startled by it, and just being at peace with it, more than it being a scary thing or anything. It's just part of our process. You know, it's the leaves are just right now starting to turn and fall, and that's just part of the cycle. You know, we're just leaves on that tree waiting to fall. You know, and it's like, you know, you have to understand how connected we are to all of these things in that cycle. And I think the difference too is that, you know, you go to Central America, South America, people are a little bit more into cyclical life than natives are. Then, you know, when we're here, it's the Protestant time. Going back to my book on time, Protestant time is like, the colonists that came over, and it's like, make hay when the sun is shining, the early bird gets the worm. These are not things that the Shipibo tribesmen say to each other. Like, you know, it's not like, hey, we got to get that high rise built by Tuesday. You know, it's like, it's like, you know, even the studying the language down there, it's more often that you'll hear day after tomorrow than you'll hear Thursday or Friday. You know, it's like, it's not looked at in the same way. And that's what I try and explain to some folks about the integration part of it. It's like, we're, you know, up here being in Protestant time, you're always going to have that in you if you were raised here. As much as you would like to think and be like the Shipibo tribes, you can't. It's just, you know, there's too much inside of us, this mixture of where we came from. So when you come back, you can't be that person, and you probably won't, because you've been living this other way for so many years. So it's kind of how to integrate that knowledge and to incorporate it into your life and try and live more like that. but still accept the fact that you're in a place where you have to accept, the people around you expect things on Wednesday, and that thing's got to be done, and you can't not show up for a couple of hours because something's going on. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a different world, and as much as we love it, you have to accept. Yeah, that's why I was glad at the temple again, professionals, because they spent enough time on the integration and tried to talk to you about going back, because it's just like a born again Christian trying to convert everybody that they meet. That's kind of annoying after a while, and it's the same thing with somebody that does ayahuasca that's trying to convince everybody they need to do ayahuasca. It's like it calls you or it doesn't call you. And my wife, she's not ready for ayahuasca. She'll nibble on some mushrooms with me, but as we say, baby steps. It's like,
Right.
if it calls her, then I'll support her 100%, and probably 150%, and I'll make sure that shit happens. But I respect her not wanting to do that just as much, and she respects what I do. And when I go off to do my things, she is very supportive of it. Yeah, she was worried when I got back that I would think differently of her, and I was thinking the same thing when I got back, that she would look different at me. And none of those things actually mattered when I got back.
Right. No, for sure, man. And it's very important that you mentioned the integration part, because for them, like for the Shipibo tribe, that the tribe that works at the place that I went to, and Temple of the Way of Light, is the same tribe, Shipibos. For them, like psychology and psychologists and doesn't exist. For them, that stuff is like, oh, that's Western shit,
Right. And that's what happened at the second place I went to. And it's funny, you mentioned that, because there was a psychologist, a doctor, and a nurse. And when me and my friends weren't sitting next to each other, I was with two other guys that I met up with, and we were with some tourists that had never done it before. They were really young people, and they're just like, "Oh, I heard about this stuff. Let's go do that." Well, he passed around. First he was talking about things, then he passed around. He goes, and I'm going to pass around through the interpreter, I'm going to pass around the ayahuasca. And he pulls up an Evian bottle, like with the ayahuasca in it. And I looked at my friends, and we all went like that. And he saw us do that. He goes, "You've done this before." And we were like, "Yeah." And so we told him where, and he was like, asked us who our maestros and maestras were. And, we informed him, and he knew them. And he goes, "Well, then you all understand." He didn't say y'all because he's a Shipibo maestro. But he says, "Then y'all understand that that normally I would be the doctor, the psychologist, and the nurse all in one." And we're like, "Yes, exactly." Because he knew the difference of the place that we were at, and the same reasons I didn't like it were the same reasons he didn't like it. Right. And he actually invited me and my two friends to come to his place in Pocopá. During the summer when he was going to be home, but that was when that Canadian guy went ballistic down there and shot an 80-year-old maestra down there. Yeah, you remember that, right? So that was the same year I was down in the Sacred Valley at Etnicus down there, that place, and that was the one that had the integrated Western medicine into it. But they had some highlights to the place, and like I said, the extracurriculars and the Shipibo guide was very, very on top of it. But those were the highlights of it: the people and the lack of telling people how to behave, and it's just chasing us around with one of those armband blood pressure things, and talking to a doctor and a psychologist. It was not exactly the same experience that I was used to or wanted to do. I was trying to avoid Western medicine. That's why I was there,
You're right. No, like I understand both school of thoughts. Like my idea is this: you go and you do your ceremony in the traditional way, or the most traditional way as you can do it, right? But also I understand that it's okay to have someone in place in case something happens, right? But I'm not okay with like chasing you with the stuff and asking you a question. It's like, no, no, no. Okay, you do your own stuff. If you need help, call me. At least that's the way I work, and that's how the way they taught me. Like if you
I
see
think
someone want some help, you go, you help him, you talk him through or her through the experience. But that's it. You don't give advice, or I mean, unless it's to
right.
quiet that person down. But that's it. You leave that person to its own process.
Yeah.
Very
Well, I
personal.
mean, Terrence McKenna, one of his things he said about doing, I remember someone asked him on mushrooms what his hero dose would be, and he said whatever makes you scared, and I thought that was awesome. And he also said, don't do it around other people. Go get yourself into your own room by yourself, and because the last thing you want when maybe your body wants to scream or cry or laugh
Right.
or whatever is somebody else going, hey, are you okay? Hey, dude, are you okay? Hey, man, are you okay? Quit crying. Are you okay? Maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to get that shit out of you. Maybe you have to purge in your own way on that stuff. And to do it by yourself or to be there is a good thing. At the temple, we had headlamps because there's no electricity there. So, we'd have the headlamps and we had to have the ones that had the red light. And so if you needed a guide because you couldn't get up and you had to go to the bathroom, you'd flash the red light so you wouldn't blind somebody or get somebody out of where they were at. That's
Right.
how professional they were. I love that. And someone would come around the side and you'd barely notice it, and they'd help them guide them to the bathrooms or whatever.
Right.
I remember there was one guy that was with us, and he warned us he was a heavy purger, and it was the first time we did. First time we did it, and it was my first time, but he came back for a second round of it to help himself out, and and we were all sitting there, and after we did it, he was like, "Oh no, why do I have to be the first guy?" And then he went down to the bathroom, and we could all hear him because it's really quiet in the Maloka, and the bathrooms are out there, and we're hearing him. And he's like, I'm a heavy purger, man. Heavy purger.
Right, man, and that's also it's interesting that you mentioned it, but you can also notice how ego plays at the beginning of the ceremony, because no one wants to be the first to purge.
Yeah,
No one wants to be the first to purge. There's some
exactly.
sort of guilt, like, oh,
Yeah.
and
I don't know why.
guy.
I don't know why. Because it's normal. It's like, because you're supposed to keep it down as long as you can. I guess that's what it is, But that's like saying, yeah, man, you can't spit that chewing tobacco out right here. So just swallow it as long as you can. Yeah. And try not to get anything on my carpet, okay? Yeah.
Right. No, it's fascinating, man. I learned a lot about people's how they interact with each other, and it's people's characteristics, I guess, character traits. It's fascinating at that. To being able to work there and experience all these different types of people, and it's
I can't. Yeah, I'm jealous, man, because I would love to have the time to do that and to be in that position. I didn't want to leave the temple at all, man. I was in heaven out there. I mean, that was like, I was just in love with the whole thing. I was in love with the people. I was in love with the experience. I was in love with all the changes I was mentally making to myself. As me and my friend put it, it's like basically, they chop you up into a thousand, a million pieces, and then walk away and go, hey, you should probably do something with that. We got to get out of here in a few hours. And you got to put yourself back together little by little and try and figure out what's wrong with yourself while you still can, and with a little bit of help. And so I definitely came out of there a different person with different priorities and a different outlook on everything in my life by far. So I was a little lost before I went in there. I remember also bitterness. I remember asking about empathy because I never really quite understood empathy so much. So they sat me next to a person, and not knowing that was what was going to happen. But when I talked to her, she had her husband had left her after she had twins for a dude, and they went off, and then she was wiping her kids' asses, and her dad had Alzheimer's, and she was like changing her dad's diapers, and she had so much on her herself, and like the empathy that came from her being next to me and watching what she was going through. I was like, okay, well, this is something that I asked for, is like to understand empathy, and that really, that was extremely intense for me, and like a great jump start to understanding empathy. Unfortunately, she was going through the stuff that was making me understand, the lesson. But I came out of there was a stronger person by far, and now I feel like I have empathy. I really think I was lacking empathy for a large portion of my life. It was nothing I'm proud of. Probably was a way of surviving, for in a lot of ways. But I'm not a psychologist.
No, I get it, man. I mean, two things to mention. Sometimes I do believe that lessons in this type of setting don't necessarily come within you ingesting the medicine. Sometimes the lessons come by like you said, by interacting with other people, and then the medicine somehow or things make sense, and you're like, okay, this is the lesson that I needed to learn, and you are sober and you realize that, right? And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that something that I realized, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm far from being a psychologist. Sometimes I do believe that life and the experiences that we had made us who we are, and sometimes we protect ourselves. That, like you said, it's not that you lack empathy because you wanted to lack empathy, because that's your experience in life made you that, and sometimes you need to go through a strong experience to realize that, right?
I didn't have people in my life that had empathy, so therefore I didn't have an understanding of it. I didn't, but people in my family, my sister's a minister, and she does a ministry, Good Shepherd House in North Georgia, and is has a lot of empathy. But she kind of broke away from our family. Like, we didn't go out and feed homeless people. We didn't do things. Like I had no idea. My family came from poor people. From projects, and they just worked for everything they had. So it was a different. It was a different feeling of being charitable, because we didn't really have anything, and I think that was kind of like not part of their upbringing, because how can you, again, if you don't put the mask on yourself, how can you help other people? And then I realized you don't really need that mask to help other people. We all need help, and it's some of us are just in a better place at the right time to be able to do it. We all go through cycles. As I think that's, we're the only creatures in the world that need another human being to have a baby around. Most critters can have a baby by themselves. We can't. We need people around. Solitary confinement is probably the hardest thing anybody could ever go through. As much as if you're in jail, you'd probably want to be in solitary confinement. That'd probably get pretty old pretty fucking quick. We like to share things. That's the nature of share our intellect, share our feelings, share our thoughts. It's part of what makes us a incredible, special being. And to me, I think through whatever source it takes, if we can be better to each other and help each other out, then we all benefit. I really don't feel much different than that tree right there that I'm staring at. I just play banjo and it doesn't.
Right, for sure, man, and that you can talk to me and the But you know what? Let me tell you an experience that I had. In one ceremony, I went out, like the effect was coming down, and somehow I felt like I needed to hug a tree. I know this is a hippie stuff, but I did hug a tree to see how it felt. And somehow I felt like this communication, and I even felt like a transfer of energy. It was so weird, man. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, I think Terence McKenna was the one who said that back in the day, humans and animals and plants could communicate somehow. And I felt that, and I'm like, okay, I see, I understand now, because beforehand, I lived in Toronto for like 5 years, and that's how I got into the psychedelics and all this, because I was depressed of not having my friends around and shit like that. So that was my approach to the medicine, as a way of understanding myself. But when I grew up, my parents were never really into nature. Like, they never took us to nature, and so nature for me was like something that was there, but that's it, you know.
Yeah,
When I experimented with this, I realized how important nature is, and how important as humans we have to be in touch with nature. Sounds hippie, but
no, I totally agree. And you know, one of the things, like I used to, my friends would laugh at me, and it's kind of sad, but true, that I would consider myself an opportunivore. You know, someone put something in front of me, and I'd be proud that I could do anything someone put in front of me and survive it. You know, and so, you know, being an opportunivore, I did things to my body later I wasn't, you know, very proud of. I've never been a junkie, luckily, but you know, I didn't, you know, nose drugs and stuff like that. That was like something that was always around, and like, you're on the road, you're tired, and, you know, whatever, you know, you got whatever excuses for that. But I remember in one of my journeys thinking about that stuff, and I remember seeing the plants absorbing, you know, what they need and giving out what they need, and the filter that they have and the filter I have, and swaying with the plants, and not realizing what I was doing to this filter here. And I have a filter for a reason, and it's a pretty big filter. But yeah, I was like, I can't be doing that. You know, it's like I'm trying to override my natural body's, you know, defense against the things around me by putting this unnatural shit inside my nose or whatever, you know. And I quit doing that stuff. It made me a much happier person. You know, whatever anybody wants to do to make themselves happy. I just hope they don't do it with fentanyl and die. But you know, it's you know, it's not for me to say what somebody should or shouldn't do. But I realized at that time that I was being very that was way more damaging to me, and I was taking advantage of something that was supposed to be used for something else,
right.
to try and make myself feel better. And I didn't like that, and so I quit doing it. And that was that made me a much happier person myself, not having that around, and decided not ever to have that in my life. And I don't really want to hang out with people where that's the majority of their life, because that's a painful thing to watch and a painful thing to be around. But everybody grows at their own rate. You know, we all have to learn things for a reason.
No, for sure,
Maybe.
man. It did the same to me, man. I mean, I've never, like, I stopped drinking alcohol and stuff like that. I've never done any hard drugs, but it did help me with my health. Like, I wanted to ask this because you mentioned it. You purged like once in the Temple of the Way of Light. Did you remember, or what let me rephrase this question. Do you remember? Yeah. Do you remember what were you purging? Did you feel the energy? Because
yes,
because I remember once I was purged, once of the multiple times that I've purged during ceremony, and I could sense what emotion I was purging. Like, okay, I'm purging the things that I don't like about my dad, or why I'm not close to my dad, and personal stuff. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, the three that happened that I said felt like someone reaching in and throwing stuff out was when I felt like I was being operated on, and because one of the things I talked to them about was my insides, and all of a sudden I was in a deep trance, but I was feeling these shocks, I remember, and I was smelling the agua de Florida being sprayed on me, and I was feeling these shocks. And you know, I guess what I thought in my head, I'm like thinking some kind of Star Trek shit where they're like, you know, using some kind of medical gun on me or something like that. I was like, what is going on? I feel this, but then I realized it was I was getting these neurons snapping. You know, like shit was coming back together. They're making stuff come back together, which was an amazing feeling. But that I think was a purge of stuff that was physical. I actually had one that was a mental one, because when I went back to Ethnicus and I went down there, I had slipped off of some of the things that I really worked on the first time I went down, and the Shipibo guide told me that that Mother Ayahuasca wasn't really happy with me for going against what I thought, and that was my after my first journey. And the second journey, I had visions inside my stomach, and there was like this black stuff that was like tar, and there was like little gremlin kind of looking guys that were very like black silhouette kind of things, and they were in there and basically like landscaping. They're like cutting all this shit out of me, and I told him what I saw the next day, and he goes, Mother Ayahuasca is very happy with you now, because he told me I needed to forgive myself. And so he said, you've forgiven yourself, and Mother Ayahuasca is very happy with you now. And that was my second out of the 3 that I did down there. But that one was more of a mental one than the first one. I think was more of a physical purging. But the purges that I had at Ethnicus did not combine at like at the same time. I was thinking of, I had a purge, like after like each night it was like after around an hour or so I had like a purge, and I didn't have that at the temple, but it didn't have to do at any certain event that was going on like at the temple. The temple one, the one that they operated on me, it just really felt like it was so quick. It was like, it wasn't like, it was just like, it's like literally somebody reaching in and throwing something down 3 times, and that was it. It was over, done with. I didn't feel any need to purge anymore. And so that was during the actual cleansing of whatever was going on in my stomach, which I just had my stomach looked at, and all is good under the hood is what they told me. And I just did the camera stuff the other day and stuff. So obviously, my health is luckily good, and hopefully they had something to do to help me with that,
Oh, for sure, man. It's fascinating. I'm always impressed by stories like yours, or like one of my best friends went to Peru before I went there, and she went there for a health reasons. She had like, I don't know the word in English, cysts in her ovaries, like stuff in her ovaries. So
okay.
she didn't want to go through surgery.
Right. So she had growths on the ovary, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember her, we were talking about her trip to Peru and what about what she was going to do there and all that. And then she went, we didn't talk for 2 weeks, her time there. And then she came back and she went to the doctor, and the doctor is like, well, I don't know what you did, but you don't have those stuff in your ovaries. And she's
That's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, man, like even in physical stuff, not only like the emotional stuff, like physical stuff that blows my mind, man. And the stuff that it's nature, man.
It wasn't just the ayahuasca, the plant medicine that they used at the temple for other things. They were very versed in it. One of my friends, the guy I went down there with, the first time he was going to get shoulder surgery, and his insurance was going to run out, and he didn't really want to have the surgery, and they told him don't do that. And they actually used snake oil, literal snake oil, on his spot, and told him not to get the surgery. And he was doing he's an athletic guy, does triathletes, and was into MMA kind of stuff. So he was using all this stuff, and that was a pretty big decision for him not to get the surgery. But he's feeling much better now. So I mean, there's something to the people that have been doing medicine for much longer than us. I think people that can integrate both things are probably going to be the ones that are most successful with their health. You can't rely on just one of the medicines, I don't think. But the fact of accepting that the whole body is connected, and you can't just treat one part of it without it affecting other parts.
No, for sure, man. It's fascinating. I haven't done a ceremony in 3 years because I wanted to take some time off. But I'm always thinking about like, okay, I think this is the time. Right?
Yeah.
It's
we've been looking to go back too. I was thinking about January, but with the virus and stuff, it's really hard to count on that. So we've been looking for some alternative places to do things at, and found a couple of places of interest. You were talking about like through the years they've been doing the ceremonies and doing it in a similar ways. And that was one thing I was really with the Navajos, my friends that let me come out, and my other friends go and experience what they do. Cause it's like, well, you've done it down there. Why don't you come up here and see how we do our medicine? And they call it a generational fire. And, everything is, the same way as it's been for, that teepee is set up, and the entrance is in the same position, and everything's in the same position that it's been in for years and years. And
right.
I really enjoyed the generational aspect of that.
Yeah, that's a different. I've never done those type of ceremonies. I do have friends that know people that do like peyote ceremonies, and it's different. I've gone to the desert by myself to eat peyote in Mexico, and that was crazy too, man.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think my next journey is actually going to end up being. Is going to be peyote by myself in the desert. When I moved out here, I had a very interesting experience with some friends of mine. Well, they weren't friends; I didn't know them yet, but I got invited to go camp out, and I guess we had 32 grams of mushrooms between three of us.
How many? 23?
32 grams of mushrooms between three of us. And and that was a great experience, except for a freak thunderstorm hit us. And we were in bear country during mating season up off the Appalachian Trail, and trying to keep two fires going in a rainstorm. It was a pretty intense experience. And now me and these guys are, now we're friends. And when I went out there, we didn't really know each other. They just invited me. They're like, hey, why don't you come out with us? And if you want to get to know people, go out and do that. And the next day we stayed there, and we did some Polish liquid acid the next day, and went hiking on the Appalachian Trail after the mushroom experience. So it was a total they say you can microdose every day and get your brain firing into a healthy way. And get the neurons to fire and reconnect to places and find, reconnect to stuff where there's problems, or you can macrodose and do a large amount. I think that definitely helped me out, because that was right when I moved out here. It was during the pandemic. There was no shows going on whatsoever. Just trying to figure things out and looking at life in a new way.
Yeah.
And that was definitely something that I needed. And I was right here in this beautiful area, desert, mountains, whatever it is, find a place that makes you comfortable and puts you at ease, even in thunderstorms and bear mating season. And, if you feel like it's your calling, you can come away with quite a bit from those experiences, I think. I think every region, folks that do San Pedro's, because the San Pedro's around. Ayahuasca was interesting because the main ingredients were 150 miles away from each other 10,000 years ago. Yeah. Somehow they figured out, put that shit together to make the very first actual drug, because it's not like marijuana or mushrooms, or they just grow and we eat the fruits of what they are. This is two different ingredients that are cooked together to make one ingredient, which technically would be the first drug.
Right.
Because that's the definition of a drug. So, it's that, but everywhere else, the mushrooms in Mexico or other places, these are what people try and get to the same place using the things that are around them.
Exactly.
And, that people couldn't travel all over. So the San Pedro was, which I'm glad that, San Pedro, I believe that you have to, eat about 3 foot of the thing without just cutting the star out. And that's a hardy task to take on. I'd be up for it, but I still haven't done that. But yeah, I know from doing ayahuasca that just drinking a cup and trying to keep that down is one thing, but trying to eat 3 foot of San Pedro,
that's another thing, man.
Yeah, cook it down and drink that. Ooh, man. But most people think it's the whole plant, not just the star, You can't just do a hit of mescaline and get the same effect as San Pedro.
No.
But yeah, I know, this being a psychonaut, I think people, there's a lot of people that have made it seem like an awful thing, and people think it's toxic, and people think a lot of things about it. And there was the reefer madness, from from all of us, and this shit is fucking evil, man. I tell you, it's so evil.
Does it grow easily there?
Everything grows. Yeah, I'm in a fucking rainforest, man. This is a rainforest here. It's the oldest mountains in the world. I think it's the third oldest river, the French Broad, that runs through here. Because I didn't realize that until moving out here, but the lower the mountains are, the older it is, not the bigger the mountains. And so you tell me the Himalayas are some teenagers, maybe some tweeners or something. The Andes, the same thing. But yeah, out here there's a lot of history out here in these parts, and I like to try and become one with it.
I don't think I've ever been to North Carolina. I don't think.
You got a friend here now.
Sorry?
I said you got a friend here now. You come on
thanks,
up.
brother. I appreciate it. I'll take your word on that for sure. And man, if you want to come to Mexico City or Mexico in general, we can go to. I can take you to Oaxaca or to the desert. I know people.
The desert would be wonderful, but yeah, I don't want to go during earthquake season.
No, we'll wait, brother. No, but you're more than welcome to come, man. I mean,
thank you. I might take you up on that too, my brother.
For sure, man. We can set up some banjo shows.
Now you're talking.
And then we can go and trip somewhere.
I love it.
Let's make it happen. Well, man,
I think we would get along pretty well out there, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. Man, it's a pleasure. I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time talking to me and being so open about your experience and everything. What I was thinking, what if we do maybe in like a few weeks or in a few months a second part, and maybe we can talk more about music. I mean, I'm loving this conversation.
Music, whatever. Yeah, no, of course, my brother. I would be happy to do that. It's nice to have someone to talk to that understands about the ayahuasca, and that's always like a pleasure to me to have somebody to talk to. Like, I don't know who actually wants to listen to us talk about it, but I get a lot out of talking to you about it, and hearing somebody else's experiences, especially someone that stayed there for 3 months and experienced, even if you weren't doing the ayahuasca and helping out, you were there for the ceremonies to see the power of it and to see what was going on. So but yeah, definitely let's do that. Let's reconnect and do one a little bit more on music, and who knows, maybe you can intersplice both of them together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it, man. The one of the reasons I like doing this is because I let people talk about what they want to talk, and for me, hearing all your stories and everything is fascinating, man, because like you said, there's not a lot of people that I can talk to about this type of subjects.
Yeah, I think Graham Hancock, when he said it one time, he said people think you're basically just going off into the jungle and doing mushrooms and having a party. And he said, well, I can guarantee you if there was a party in LA and I brought a punch bowl full of ayahuasca, it would still be full at the end of the night. That's exactly true. People be like, what's this? Oh my God, shit. You got to really mean it. It's not something you just take lightly and do that. When you start drinking a tree, you're gonna understand that you got to mean it to do it, but yeah, man, let's definitely get back together and reconnect, and we'll talk music next time. I'd love to talk music. I'm not much of a music historian, but I'm really awful with names of past musicians and things like that. But I do know the power of music, and I love music. Man.
Or before I let you go, let me show you something, and I have a question that I want to ask you. Just give me a second.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember this type of tapestry.
Oh yeah, dude, I've got one hanging up in my living room. Yeah, hold on, let me show you. Let me walk you into my house real quick.
for people who don't know what this is a representation of a Nicaro. Wow, that's beautiful.
There we go. It's up in my living room right here. This was made by one of my Shipibo maestros out there. But yeah, that was my first trip down to Iquitos. But yeah, that's the I actually have a tattoo with some of that on my back that my buddy I went down there was with. Here's my Texas section right here. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, man. I've seen that place before.
Yeah.
I love Austin. To be honest, I love Austin, Texas.
Well, I love what Austin, Texas used to be. I can't say I really care for it too much right now. It's not what when I moved there a long time ago, the old timers, and that was in like '86 when I finally got there. But the old timers, they said this place already sucks, and I was like, it's pretty fucking cool to me. And then by the time I left, man, I was done with it, man. There's nothing. I miss Tex-Mex food. I miss brisket because everything out here is pulled pork, and I miss some of my friends and musician buddies. But other than that, I do not miss living in Austin, Texas one bit. Sorry, Austin. California, you can have it. Okay. You want it that bad, you can have it.
Yeah.
All right, I said my piece.
Well, man,
brother.
Just give me a second.
Okay.
Acabas de escuchar Conversaciones de Altura.